Hey, Pretentious Engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but welcome to your weekly one-on-one where I help engineers, global leaders, and entrepreneurs find their way. Now, I apologize for the honey glow on my cheeks and the crazy hair. I just did a 4-mile run and it's like 6:30 in the morning, so the kids should wake up in about 15 minutes, but it's one of the only quiet moments in my home with 4 kids. That said, I do have baby Akio off to the side, so if he becomes distraught, I will finish this video with him. He seems like he's going to be all right. Let's jump in. So I've been a global medtech entrepreneur for about 10 years now, working across a wide range of minimally invasive surgical technologies for Johnson & Johnson. The meat of my career began as a design engineer, where I worked on a platform called Harmonic. You can Google it, Ethicon Harmonic. We basically take a long titanium blade, vibrate it an undisclosed amount of cycles per second, but it's very, very fast. And we bring that device in contact with tissue. The friction creates immense amounts of heat that causes all the water to evaporate. The proteins cross-link and get sticky. So it allows us to cut and coagulate at the same time. So we can cut without bleeding. We insert this into the body through really small ports. And then that allows us to it allows surgeons to navigate very difficult anatomies with a high level of confidence and limited bleeding. It's awesome. So I worked as a design engineer on that, and then I moved over into robotic surgical instrumentation about 7 years ago. I then progressed into a robotics controls engineering role supporting the Verb platform. Johnson & Johnson had a partnership with Alphabet. Alphabet owns Google. They also own Verily Life Sciences. Verily Life Sciences and Johnson & Johnson made a deal to found a company called Verb Surgical. Verb Surgical is making our first surgical robot at the time for a soft tissue robot. So this would be for any kind of like cancer procedures, gastric bypasses, things like that. So I owned where devices interfaced with the actual robotic system so that we could kind of bring our instruments to life. Really exciting, fun stuff. Go out to the Google campus all the time. And then I later moved into a systems engineering role where I owned all the risks and requirement cascades for a portfolio of wristed tools on our Otava robot. Our Otava robot came from an acquisition of another robotics company called Oris, which you can look up. They have a really cool robot that's actually commercialized right now called Monarch, which is an endoluminal robot. It's bendy, so it basically enters through natural orifice, goes into the small airways of your lungs, and then it can be used to biopsy different tumors to determine if they're cancerous or not. So really great working across all of those different technologies. And then in 2020, I was offered the opportunity to direct front-end innovation from Japan. So my family eventually relocated out to the region where I traveled across Japan, connected with Japanese clinicians, understood their unmet needs, and then directed an ecosystem of engineers to progress technology on their behalf. I have a master's in global leadership, a passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I believe that the more inclusive versus exclusive your teams are, the more likely you are to progress meaningful product innovation. From a personal life perspective, I'm a husband and father of 4 children. This one came in Japan. The other 3 were born in the US. I've dabbled across like all instruments. All of my instruments are in storage right now, which is a whole nother conversation. It makes me sad. And then I've done content creation, which we'll get to later in the deck, for about 4 years on top of all the engineering work. And then I run half marathons. So I have a half marathon in about 4 weeks, and I've built a 16-week training program for individuals looking to run their first marathon or half marathon. Concerning my next, I recently had a strategic exit from Johnson & Johnson. There'll be a whole video on that someday. Actually, the majority of the first class or modules is going to be focused on that. So after a decade with Johnson & Johnson, I made the challenging decision to leave and continue our life in Japan. And I'm moving more into the Tokyo entrepreneurial scene, doing some brand management, executive consulting, and startups. So I have a very deep personal global perspective. Our family navigated 12 relocations over the course of 1 year to get to Japan, which sounds impossible. It is real, and it was hard, and it felt impossible the whole time. We were heavily impacted by COVID and other events outside of our control. This diagram on the right showed the transition was supposed to only be 4 moves, and the whole goal was to track where Hezekiah, who's our youngest, where his PS4 would be. So the PS4 would go into a shipping container, onto a boat, travel across the sea, sit in Yokohama Bay, and then move into our home that we were planning on. Now, this was heavily disrupted. We ended up being offered the job in February 2020. Then COVID killed it, so I moved into systems engineering. I was reoffered it in April 2021. And then we were told we'd be relocating quickly because we thought Japan would open for the Olympics. That was a false assumption. So then we moved into a 2-bedroom furnished apartment, which was super tight. We raised our third daughter Harry Potter style in a closet in a pack and play because there just wasn't room for her. And after a couple weeks there, we discovered a massive bed bug infestation, which caused us to move into a hotel, to Chicago family, back into a hotel, back into the unit after multiple rounds of extermination, all the trauma associated with that. For instance, me and my wife, if I was on a business trip, we used to say like, good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. Like that was just like our thing. Completely out of our life now. That is not an expression that has good feelings. And then we were offered an emergency medical visa. So we were like first in line to immigrate to Japan because Johnson & Johnson was lobbying the Japanese Ministry of Wealth and Transportation on my behalf. So we move out of that apartment, go to Chicago for Thanksgiving. And 2 days before we got our visa approved to fly, they closed the borders for Omicron. So then we were stranded in Chicago. We ended up staying with family, a hotel, a furnished apartment. Our kids went to school in Chicago for 4 months. And then we finally were able to relocate in March 2022, I believe. Is that what happened? Akio? And then from there, we moved into what we thought was our foreverish house that we actually just exited from. So we actually did our 13th move to move into a smaller Japanese style home on an initiative in our transition from J&J. I have a left and a right brain. So we have the engineering side of things, the global leadership side of things. It's very tactical, the surgical robotics, all of that. But then I also am a really big creative. We've built a brand called A Family Frenzy, where we welcome folks into the frenzy of our life as we now learn how to raise 4 kids in Japan. And we've had quite an amazing run thus far over 4 years. We've gathered around 20 million views. We have an inclusive community of around 40,000 folks across all these different platforms. And because I'm a very dabbly, exploratory person, we have sub-brands. So Family Frenzy Social is actually my consulting brand for any kind of content creation, digital marketing, media strategies. So that's the top right. And then one-on-one with the Pretentious engineers, what you're here for, which is bringing you into proximity with all of the insights I have from engineering, entrepreneurship, and global leadership. One-on-one. Dad bod, I want to make fitness accessible to your average Joe. My name is Joe. So basically, I put a GoPro in my head and I go for runs, and I complain and talk the whole time, basically. I actually ended up recording a 16-week half marathon journey that was accessible to folks who are heavier set, have pre-existing health conditions or prior sports injuries. The first 4 weeks of that, we actually train you how to lift and build core and back strength, walk with good form, and train you up to walk a 5K. And then from there, we start to progress into jogging if it's safe for you. So I'm really excited to also potentially migrate that to SKOOL. Right now that's on a Google Classroom. And then we do Japan life content. So as I travel around and have different insights from living in this region, I try to bring people into proximity to what life in Japan is like. We have so many different stereotypes and biases between different people groups. For instance, the expression that's so weird is not something we use in our home. It's different. If we grew up in this context, it would have been normative to us. So when we approach food, when we approach culture, structure, government, all these different processes, having this mindset of difference versus weird is something we strive to do as a family. Hey, it's Joe from the future, like 2 hours and 17 minutes in the future. My kids are off to school, and I didn't put this on for you. I have a leadership latte with other cool leaders in the Tokyo area. Anyway, let's keep going. So I wanted to talk through kind of my niche. Over the last 10 years at Johnson & Johnson, prior to my exit, I've worked a lot across upstream R&D with design, systems engineering, robotics controls. And when I directed global innovation from Japan, I had a lot more proximity to our commercial organization and was really able to kind of filter what technology should we be developing in order to meet the needs of the clinicians we serve. And this gets to what I call the Innovation Trifecta, which is kind of my sweet spot. So basically, you have an unmet need that you need to uncover, and we use different processes to do that within marketing. For me, I'm a big fan of ethnographic research, where you actually immerse alongside your customers. So I would attend tons of case observations, and you're taking lots of notes, trying to infer what are the challenges or pain points that these clinicians are navigating. And then you have post-operative interviews with these clinicians where you can actually test if your assumptions or your insights are correct or not. And that's really where like the meat is. That's where you have these aha moments of like, this is what we need to create. The second part of that triangle is technical feasibility. So just because a clinician wants something or your customer wants a technology doesn't mean that it's actually feasible to create it or to create it at the right price point where they would buy it. So a lot of times clinicians want extra features that make your things better, but they don't necessarily improve the patient outcome, which means they can't get the right reimbursement. So you get stuck where you can't charge a premium for premium features. So I kind of lived in that tension a lot within medical innovation or medtech innovation. And then the third piece of that triangle is learning from the commercial organization of how do you actually optimize the first two pieces so that you can commercialize a solution and have it be profitable. I think the innovation trifecta is huge for any company, whether it's mature or a startup. So a lot of the consulting I've been doing lately is helping individuals optimize across that innovation trifecta. A lot of the founders I run into are really heavy on technical feasibility and progressing technology, but you can sometimes lose sight of what unmet needs you're actually developing that technology for, and also how do you commercialize it, which is a huge gap that leads to a lot of pain points financially within these different startups. And then underneath all of this is brand. Brand actually increases your pricing power. So that's kind of the first part that I do a lot of is how do you actually shape the technology based on the unmet needs, commercial feasibility, and then wrap brand or mission and vision around that technology, which allows you to charge a more equitable rate for whatever you're creating. And all of this allows you to cross the chasm. So this is the sigmoid curve. I don't know where I'm pointing. But basically, the sigmoid curve can be used for any technology, whether it's implementation of cell phones, the internet, VR. I recently gave a talk on humanoid robotics and what challenges are we facing in humanoid robotics and whether or not they get adopted. And you go from kind of these enthusiasts, early adopters, and then you hit a chasm where something doesn't become mainstream and it dies. A beautiful example of that's Google Glass. Like people say it was ahead of its time, but it didn't cross over. It didn't make it into mainstream. Is Apple Vision living into that, right? So I'm really interested in helping technologies break past the chasm. I think brand is actually a huge piece of it, as well as getting your trifecta right. So that's kind of my perspectives on innovation as I dabble across all kinds of different technologies and fun. We'll have lessons on it in the future. So why SKOOL? Well, let's jump into that. Now, this diagram, as humorous as it is, I love flowcharts. I've done far more flowcharts as a systems engineer that I've ever wanted to do. I've constrained lots of requirements based on sequences. User picks up instrument. User tries to install instrument on robot. User controls robot in such a manner and then runs into a collision state where two arms are touching. User gets confused and keeps progressing the motion. The instrument breaks. It breaks off in the patient. What's the risk? What's the severity? I love flow. And unfortunately, our journey as engineers is often prescribed oversimplified of are you a math and science person? Great, go be an engineer. Do you like things that move? Great, go be a mechanical engineer. Do you like bridges, which was where I thought I would land? Great, go be a civil engineer. And then it keeps checking down to eventually like, are you really an engineer? No, you're a physicist. Like go major in physics. Or no, you're actually wrong. Just be anything besides an engineer. And I don't believe in this. Actually, my father-in-law gave me this t-shirt that I don't like, but I wear it as an example where it says like engineer, but it spells engineer wrong. It's like I'm an engineer, fail, I'm an engineer, I'm an engineer. Like they keep spelling it wrong. And it just says I'm good at math. And that is the antithesis of who I am as a creative and a collaborator and an innovator. I believe that engineers that learn how to communicate and tell the right stories around the mission of what they're creating, those are the ones that become most successful and progress in their careers. But unfortunately, we're not really given a path beyond being good at math and science, and then boom, you're in industry, figure out the rest. We hit all these different pain points in our journey of, how do I find a global rotation? Or I don't like my job. What should I do about that? Should I just wait it out? Should I wait for another boss to come in? Should I progress into a different organization? Should I leave? How do I get this work-life integration? I'm having kids, but I'm used to working a certain way. All these different pain points we run into are because we don't have a path that's prescribed to us. It's undefined. It's disorienting and it's isolating. We navigate these struggles alone, and that's something that I did for many years of my career. And luckily, I was able to set up a lot of strategic one on ones over time outside of my core organization, which gave me a shifted perspective so that I could progress and find a path forward to secure my next. So, that's a little bit of the why. It really comes from pain. I want this community to be as authentic and meaningful to you as possible. From undefined to bounded, this is an area that I actually shared. I shared this with one of my friends, Jorge. He went through it and like immediately that clicked. Jorge navigated a really challenging layoff, and he ended up jumping from an engineering discipline into a clinician facing role. So he actually went out in the field. He's a I forget the exact term, but like technical support is like the lowest way to think about it. He does a lot more than that. But as an engineer, he feels like he's kind of burning time. He's close to the clinicians. He's getting all these insights, but he's not connected into R&D. He feels like he becomes less hireable as he's not an engineer for longer, and that's ultimately where he wants to be. So many aspects of his journey, if you consider it like a problem to be solved, all the pieces are on the ground, and he doesn't really have a well-bounded problem space or a well-bounded pathway to actually progress forward. That's why I love mentoring Jorge. He's a close friend, and he enabled a lot of my success while I was in Japan as well, which is great. And this leads to our journey being disorienting. There's all these different tracks that we could be on. We are on one. We think there's certain things we have to do in order to jump to the next track. A lot of times these hoops are positioned on the track we're on, keep progressing as a technologist, and then eventually you'll be given a hoop to become a leader. For me, coming into industry, I was always a leader. I was a leader from the start. Yet I wasn't able to be calibrated well with my peers because I was too strong as a leader, but perceived as not technical enough because I was doing all of these overarching alignment technology shaping initiatives and problems versus grinding out a tolerance stack or making a gear train, even though those are very essential, important parts of mechanical engineering. So often it is unclear how we got on the track we're on, if the track's taking us somewhere we want to be, and what are the pathways to an alternate track. Some of my favorite mentors have started in engineering, they went into sales, they then progressed into global strategic marketing, which is shaping where the business is moving based on the needs of the market, and they still bring their engineering skill set into the room every time there's a meeting. Whereas I love all marketers, but there are certain marketers that have no science foundation, which means that they're going to push on the team to move faster and harder towards something that the team physically can't make. Like it's outside the bounds of physics sometimes, not always. And there's room for healthy conflict in that. But some of the best marketers I've worked with have an engineering foundation. And it's a skill set that I've leveraged as I'm really market facing in Japan. So being able to identify these hoops is really important. And a lot of organizations try to constrain or retain you exactly where they're at. So they're not always transparent on what hoops you need to develop or develop for so that you can jump through them to get somewhere else. But luckily, this community is focused on that and having transparency. And the last piece is isolation. I think a lot of engineers suffer early in their careers because they feel a lack of transparency, both between them, their manager, their director, and vertically, as well as with their peers. For instance, I was part of a hiring class of like 30 or so full-time hires within Johnson & Johnson. And while we did social things together and we built friendships, there was also this pressure we experienced because we're calibrated against one another, and then advancement and financial opportunities and future projects are dependent on how well we move within the pack. It's a zero sum game. And I never liked the way that made me feel. Over time, as I moved into different groups or functions, I kept some of those friends, and then we could be more honest. Then we could be more honest with one another. But I think this lack of transparency causes us to really struggle and suffer in silence. And a lot of individuals go on the same journey not knowing that other people are there with them in the struggle or have experienced the same hurts or frustrations. So what I wanted to capture was the energy from a half marathon. Now, my wife didn't really understand why it's raining or why we'd put that as a future state, but the reality is work is hard. Career is hard. The things we progress on behalf of the people we serve is hard. But in a marathon, you still have people alongside you moving forward. You have people in the stands that are still cheering, even if everything sucks, which is what most runs start to turn into. And it does add a sense of purposefulness to what feels like unnecessary pain or struggle. And in the same way, I can't promise that joining this community will make your life easy. I'm not selling easy. What I'm selling is the opportunity to not be alone and to have people alongside you in the journey, because it's something that I so desperately needed early in my career and had to work very hard to find, especially external from my teams, finding alternate perspectives through one-on-ones in other organizations and other companies, just so that I could understand, how does the world really work that I'm operating within? And how do I do what's best for myself and for my family while still feeling fulfilled in what I progress? And what really drives me to launch this community is to bring you into all the learnings I've had over the last 10 years. I have so many scars, so many challenging stories and moments I've had to navigate, decisions that have felt impossible that I found a pathway through. And rather than having you get stuck for 3 months, a year, multiple years in different situations, I'm hoping that I could just unlock your journey so that you can secure your next that much more efficiently. I do have deep expertise in innovation, global leadership, career advancement, as well as work-life integration. I have found some unique ways to balance fathering 4 children and progressing my career in a way that's fulfilling and fun and provides value to society holistically at scale. And I'm hoping that some of these modules and classes that I pull together will persist, and it's something that you can share with your colleagues and your friends as you all move forward together. So let's make getting started as simple as possible. You've already taken the first step to do the waitlist, which is incredible. My team and I are going to review all of the applicants, and we're going to select, handpick individuals that we think are most compatible with the holistic community. That does mean that some people will be excluded from the first cohort, but it's an intentional choice. I want to make sure that we can craft the right culture together where everyone moves forward well. And if that's successful over the next 3 to 6 months, then we'll kick off another wait list and scale beyond the pilot. But as a follow up to joining the waitlist, you don't have to wait. We can start interacting with one another and do our one on ones through email, which sounds fun and different. So I'm working on curating Sunday Sips, which will have a nice blog post at the top of it focused on engineering, global leadership, as well as entrepreneurship. All updates on a family-friendly social and the business I'm getting off the ground, the learnings I have trying to do entrepreneurship in Japan, as well as some highlights like videos that I've curated that I'm really excited about. The algorithm's not always kind to me because I dabble across different niches. I don't have one. So if you're interested in exploring that, it'll all be in one newsletter and you'll get it once a week and that's it. It will never be spam. We're both far too busy for that. The second thing is add a friend. I have this little button you can click on, and it's as simple as just forwarding a link out and saying, hey, I'm thinking about joining this community. Would you like to come with me? Individuals who join a journey together with friends progress much farther in their journey. They sharpen each other, they have trust right away, and they can work through the same courses, the same modules together and see each other win. So my hope is for you to get a running buddy, basically, in your journey. And while you could find one within this community, if you were truly isolated, it's likely you have a friend that you would like to take with you. So enrollment's going to close, I think I put September 30th. So make sure you forward it along before that cutoff. Otherwise, your friend has to wait. And finally, this is my friend Guion. Guion is a frog in a pot. Now, Guion's a real person. We're colleagues. Maybe someday he'll be part of this community. But the idea of a frog in a pot came through a conversation with him in which we were both navigating circumstances that we know didn't serve us, yet we still consented to be within them. And what I mean by that is our company was navigating scarcity. We saw a lot of constrictions occurring. Upward mobility was disappearing. Things were evaporating around us, yet we stayed in the pot. And if you know the expression, like a frog in the pot eventually gets cooked, right? The temperature rises gradually, the frog can't detect it, and then eventually the frog's not alive anymore. So this module, which is in the middle of how to say goodbye, is going to empower you to recognize where are there different inertia, things that are keeping you stuck in the pot, and how do you face that and start to progress towards impact or a shift, a change in momentum moving forward in your journey. So this is from the How to Say Goodbye journey, in which I document my strategic exit from Johnson & Johnson and try to break it into various principles you can apply to your unique context. It's really that easy. Subscribe to Sunday Sips, add a friend to the journey, watch the free lesson, Once we get to critical mass, we'll launch the community and I'll start making content. But thank you, friends. You can sip on that.